You are listening to the Adult Sabbath School Lessons for the third quarter of 2022. This is lesson number 1 of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide in the Crucible with Christ. This lesson is titled The Shepherd's Crucible and is ready for teaching on July 2. The author is Pastor Gavin Anthony, who was conference president in Iceland when he wrote this series of lessons. Today, your lesson is read by Dr. Percy Harrold. Wednesday, June 29, Unexpected Detour 2, The Surrounded Table. Psalm 23 verse 5 reads, You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Throughout our lives, we will inevitably bump into some enemies. How do you deal with them? Have you ever lain awake at night, tossing and turning, dreaming up ways to take revenge on those who are trying to hurt you or destroy your work? It can be hard for Christians to know how to handle enemies. What types of enemies have you had in your life? How have you responded to those who have tried to hurt you or those you care for? How well did you follow Christ's words to us in Matthew 5:44 or Paul's in Romans 12:18-21? Well, we better find out about those, Matthew 5:44. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. And Romans 12:18-21, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink, for in so doing you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. In Psalm 23 verse 5, which read, You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, you anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over, David shows us an interesting way of dealing with enemies. He obscures their presence by looking instead at what God is doing in his behalf. And God is there preparing a banquet for him. In David's culture, when an honoured guest came for a feast, the host would anoint his head with oil as the guest was about to enter the banqueting hall. The oil was a mixture of olive oil and perfume. Then the guest would be seated in front of far more food than one could ever eat. How could the 3 items, table, oil, cup, in Psalm 23 verse 5, help to remind us about how God provides, even when we are in the valley? As Paul reminds us, our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places, as it says in Ephesians 6:12. Our enemies include those we see and those we don't. Whether we like it or not, we are surrounded. Yet, when we are with the shepherd, not one enemy, visible or invisible, can steal what he has provided for us. And so to finish today, reflect on how the shepherd has treated you when you have been surrounded by enemies. What can you see in these times that can enable you to give thanks even during such difficulties? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.